Good morning, and thank you for joining us here today in Aurora. My name is Richard Irvin. I'm the mayor of the city of Aurora, and I'm running to be the next governor of the state of Illinois. I'm joined today by my running mate, State Representative Avery Bourne, also State Senate Deputy Minority Leader Sue Resin, and State Representative David Welter. We are here to discuss the senseless tragedy that occurred at the LaSalle Veterans Home, where 36 of our nation's heroes needlessly lost their lives due to the extreme and gross negligence under J.B. Pritzker's watch. Last Thursday, the Illinois Auditor General released an audit report requested by the legislators standing here, which found what we all feared. J.B. Pritzker, his senior team, and the Illinois Department of Public Health were aware in real time of the outbreak at LaSalle Veterans Home and carelessly were slow to act. Slow to action that resulted in the preventable deaths of 36 of Illinois' heroes. By slow to action, let's be clear, the Public Health Department did not arrive at the LaSalle home until 11 days after the outbreak started. This is despite leadership getting daily updates on the worsening crisis at the home. The audit says that all but 4 of the 36 tested positive prior to the first site visit from the Department of Public Health. And it's crystal clear from what we are reading and seeing that Pritzker and his team only began to care about this after the media, all of you guys, began pointing it out and bring it to his attention. As a veteran who proudly served my country in combat, I am sickened by the fact that J.B. Pritzker and his administration sat idly by instead of springing into action to save the lives of those who served our country and defended our freedoms. This is the same person who blasted his predecessor time and time again for the tragedy that occurred at the Quincy Veterans Home when 13 veterans lost their lives due to a Legionnaire's breakout. He swore that he would do better as governor. He failed. He knew the outbreak system was flawed, but he did nothing to address it. COVID-19 had been ravaging Illinois for months before it hit the LaSalle Veterans Home. Safety protocols and procedures should have been in place at large-scale living facilities, especially those run by the state and J.B. Pritzker, who talked about the seriousness of COVID on TV daily. This wasn't some silent disease that crept in through the water system of an antiquated building. There is quite simply no reason why this tragedy could not have been prevented. 36 families lost their loved ones due to the negligence and incompetence of J.B. Pritzker and his administration. There needs to be accountability. There needs to be accountability. J.B. Pritzker needs to answer to the families who senselessly lost their loved ones because of his negligence. J.B. Pritzker needs to accept responsibility instead of consistently pointing the finger at others. Thank you, and I will turn it over to Senate Deputy Minority Leader Sue Resin.
Thank you, Mayor, for your service to our country and for your remarks today. We're here to discuss the deadliest outbreak at a state-run facility in Illinois history, the LaSalle Veterans Home. This tragedy comes down to a failure of leadership by Governor Pritzker. As a candidate, he says it's our obligation to defend our veterans and keep them safe. That's not something Governor Rauner did. Let me say this, that's not something that Governor Pritzker did either. Since taking office, Governor Pritzker had every opportunity to improve veterans' care at the state-run homes. Well, before the pandemic began, through recommendations from the performance audit, from consultants, and through executive orders, starting with the 2019 Illinois Auditor General's recommendation to develop a timely, on-site policy by the Department of Public Health when an outbreak occurs at a veterans home. By not implementing this 2019 recommendation, it proved fatal during the outbreak at the LaSalle Veterans Home. The 3-day delay in Quincy turned into an 11-day delay in LaSalle, and IDPH still lacks such a policy today. A timely on-site response is essential to slow the spread of an outbreak. And as this month's Auditor General's report stated, IDPH did nothing to offer any assistance or advice as to how to slow the spread at the home. There's no question that residents were more protected following IDPH's on-site visit nearly 2 weeks after the outbreak than before IDPH decided to show up. The governor's office, IDVA, and IDPH had the same data, but no one acted on it for nearly 2 weeks. Of the 710 long-term care facilities being monitored by IDPH, only 4 reported more than 50 cases during the first week of November, with the LaSalle Veterans Home being the sole facility with over 100 cases. That information alone, according to the Auditor General's report, should have raised an immediate response by this administration, but it didn't. It's clear that no one oversaw the state's response. I've offered a series of legislative bills changing how the state responds to outbreaks, including a time frame from which IDPH should arrive on site when an outbreak occurs. I've called on the governor multiple times over the past 14 months to get these responses and proposals called, yet his office has refused to respond. It's puzzling and it's frustrating why a governor is so disengaged in this process of fixing the tragic mistakes that led to 36 veterans dying at the LaSalle Veterans Home. Governor Pritzker is not defending our veterans and keeping them safe. It's time for the governor to set aside his pride and his lack of leadership and commit to supporting my legislation solutions, which he ignored for the last year. Doing nothing will only lead us down the path of another Quincy and LaSalle. Our veterans deserve more than failed leadership and shifting blame to others. Next, I would like to introduce you to Representative David Welter.
Thank you, Senator Rezin. I introduced House Resolution 62 because we needed a truly independent and thorough investigation into the LaSalle veterans outbreak. The governor's investigation was deceptive from the start, giving families of lost loved ones false hope of a full and complete picture of what went wrong to cause the deaths of 36 veterans. Instead, the investigation had a predetermined conclusion, assigned blame to only ones under review. The investigation scope was so narrow, it exempted the governor's office and IDPH from any scrutiny, failed to interview crucial witnesses, and relied on hearsay, and drew conclusions that ran counter to documents provided by IDVA officials. The Auditor General's report stated, the findings in the DHS OIG report did not provide a complete account of the response of the outbreak at the LaSalle Veterans Home. Why wasn't this the goal by Governor Pritzker from the start, a full, complete account of the response? By focusing solely on IDVA, the governor quickly assigned responsibility and hoped to move past any future review of his administration. If it weren't for the work done by the Auditor General's office, Governor Pritzker would have gotten away with covering up his administration's failures, with the public never learning the full extent of the multi-agency failure. You cannot lead when your priority is to mislead, and Governor Pritzker and his administration have consistently misled the public. Instead of thanking the Auditor General for his work, Governor Pritzker chose to blame others and offer excuses that do not reflect the previous testimony or the facts obtained by the auditors. That reaction is not someone who wants to figure out what went wrong and hold people accountable unless it's on his own terms. It's time for the governor to follow through on his promise and hold people accountable, even if we must force him to. Deputy Governor Sil Flores said IDVA hid the outbreak severity from her. Yet, we now know her office was receiving updates as early as day one and chose to do nothing. The deputy governor said the administration took immediate action when learning of the outbreak. That, as we know, did not happen either. The deputy governor previously testified she was coordinating the multi-agency response, but the Auditor General's report said she did not recognize the significance of the outbreak until 10 days into it. 10 days. The deputy governor admitted the response to the outbreak was her responsibility, and it's clear she failed. The deputy governor should resign by the end of the day, and if she refuses to, then Governor Pritzker must fire her. Governor Pritzker promised accountability to the families. This is his opportunity to follow through on his promise, if he meant it. Now I'd like to turn it over to State Representative Avery Bourne.
Good morning. I'm Avery Bourne, State Representative for the 95th Legislative District and candidate for Lieutenant Governor. I first want to say thank you to my colleagues in the legislature, Senator Rezin and Representative Welter, for fighting so hard for this audit and for legislative changes that will keep this from happening in the future. Without their work, I don't know that we ever would have truly known the facts and what happened in this tragedy and the work that we could do to mitigate it in the future. What occurred at the LaSalle Veterans Home is truly a tragedy. But what's more difficult to swallow is knowing what could have been done by the Pritzker administration had they acted faster to mitigate these heroes losing their lives. This report from the Illinois Auditor General shows us that the Pritzker administration, they were getting regular updates, as you have heard, nearly daily updates, and they knew what was unfolding, and yet did not respond timely. Despite knowing how it was escalating, it still took 11 days for anyone from IDPH to show up to the home. This new information is in stark contrast to what we saw earlier with the sham report that was mentioned, that was commissioned by the Pritzker administration, that very clearly was meant to cover up the wrongdoings of the Pritzker administration and shift blame. Let's remember, Governor Pritzker, when that sham commission came out with its report, he had absolutely no issue blaming the Department of Veterans Affairs and former Director Chapalavia for the tragedy. But now we know the truth, that Governor Pritzker and IDPH share equally the responsibility for this tragedy. The state of Illinois has already experienced a tragedy at a veterans home, the Quincy Veterans Home, an issue that Governor Pritzker was happy to campaign on when he ran for governor. But his words during his campaign and his words during the pandemic did not match the actions of his administration when confronted with a tragedy at a veterans home. The men and women at the LaSalle Veterans Home literally put their lives on their line to fight for us, and the state let them down when it was our responsibility to take care of them under our care. We need leadership in Illinois who will ensure that we correct these grave mistakes that happened and to make sure that a tragedy like this does not happen again. Governor Pritzker and IDPH must be held accountable. Thank you, and we will take some questions.
Questions?
Mayor Irvin, can you talk a little bit about the other news of the day, which is the U.S. Supreme Court apparent decision to overrule Roe v. Wade? Do you agree with that or not? Can you give us your thoughts?
Listen, I'm pro-life, but as it concerns that leaked draft document, until we get the final decision from the Supreme Court, I think it's irresponsible for us to hypothesize and speculate on what the outcome will be. When they make their decision and we have a final draft, we can talk about it then. Until then, it's definitely speculation. Can I finish? I'm going to finish a question. Let me finish the question. It's definitely supposed to be questioned.
National effort.
Now,
You support Roe v. Wade, and Mitch McConnell was talking about a national effort of congressional legislation to ban abortion. Do you support that?
listen, as I said, I'm pro-life, but what we're talking about and what the issue is today is this this draft document that is just a draft leaked document in and of itself.
Mitch McConnell was asked about should there be a federal law to ban abortion.
So I can't.
Forget the leaked document.
I just hold on a second. Hold on one second. You know, I can't talk about Mitch McConnell and what he said and what any national thing. But hold on. What we do in Illinois, you know, I'm running for governor of the state of Illinois. I'm not talking about what the federal government's going to do. In Illinois, we have our own lester, and what we're doing, and what we're talking about today is the extreme things that J.B. Pritzker is doing. What I'm hearing when I drive around Illinois is that people are concerned about the extremities, the extreme things that our government is doing. For example, you know, he signed a bill, he signed into law the fact that a teenager could get an abortion without their parents' notification. A kid can't get an aspirin in high school without their parents' notification, and in most times their consent. But J.B. Pritzker found it okay, acceptable to sign this legislation and put it in the law that a teenager can walk into an abortion clinic and get an abortion without their parent being notified. That's a porn. And I think hold on, let me finish. And you know, as I said, you know, that's a porn. And what I'm hearing that we can across the spectrum, people agree that we've got to reinstate parental notification. Marianne?
Do you have any exceptions? If you are pro-life, do you see an exception?
Yes, I've said this before. I'll say it again. My exceptions are rape, incest, and the health of the mother, health and life of the mother.
Mayor,
Yes,
you say you're pro-life. What will you do as governor for the pro-life movement? What bills do you want to see hit your desk?
Listen, as I said, you know, as I ride around the state, we talk about I talk to people about a number of things, and one of the things that most concerns people across the spectrum is the fact that this legislation has been signed that gives a teenager the ability to go into an abortion clinic and get an abortion without parental notification whatsoever. You know, and as I said, that's a porn. And across the spectrum, people agree that that's extreme. Tony, I'm calling you next, bro. Anybody from downstate?
Here's some questions from downstate media. This is from Dave Dahl at WTAX in Springfield, Illinois. You have voted Democratic in the past. Why the change to pro-life now?
Listen, I've been pro-life my whole political career. Matter of fact, the first office I ever held was as a Republican committeeman, first appointed by my fellow Republicans, and then elected by my fellow Republicans. Now, again, when you run for office, it's about comparing records. And my opponents, even before I formally announced that I was running for office, you know, tried to define what my record is. And I'll define my own record. My record as a veteran of the United States Army who served our country in time of war. My record is as a former prosecutor who personally put criminals behind bars and worked with our police to keep our community safe. You know, my record is the mayor of the second largest city with a proven record of reducing taxes, bringing in businesses and residents and getting things done. We all know under J.B. Pritzker, what I'm hearing people are concerned about is that crime is out of control. Taxes and wasteful spending is out of control. Corruption is out of control. And because of it, people are leaving our state in droves. Businesses are shutting down, never to open. And the ones that can are saying, I want to leave our state as well. You know, we're losing businesses by the day.
Mayor, we're hearing that Ms. McConnell again on different topics saying if President Trump were to run again, that he would be the Republican nominee in the next cycle. Did you vote for President Trump, and would you support President Trump if you ran again?
Listen, that's exactly what J.B. Pritzker wants. That's exactly what J.B. Pritzker wants, Oliver to be talking about. He wants to be talking about anything other than his failures and his record, and how my successes as mayor of the city of Aurora, trump his failures as a state. Look, we're here talking today about 36 veterans, 36 heroes of the state of Illinois that died because of his gross negligence. He doesn't want to talk about his negligence and the extremes that he's done. He doesn't want to talk about the extreme of signing this legislation that allows. Hold on a second. Let me finish. Voters. Listen, hold on. Voters know my record, and I'm pro-life. But hold on. But let me finish. Let me finish. You know what I'm hearing around the state is people want to focus on the future. They want to focus on the fact that taxes and taxes are out of control. Corruption's out of control. You know, the crime in the state is out of control. Another extreme thing that J.B. Pritzker did is he signed a bill that he calls a Safety Act, which is really I Hate the Police Act, that gives more credibility to criminals than it does to the victims and the police that keep us safe every day. You know, he signed legislation which is the largest tax hike in the history of our state, And he lost that one, but if he's reelected, he's going to do it again. Let me finish. Just let me finish. You know, he said that we should be grateful that Mike Madigan is the Speaker of the House of the state of Illinois. And he didn't condemn Mike Madigan all the way up until the indictment, even though he knew that ComEd pled guilty to corruption. Now, the Madigan-Pritzker corruption, and Pritzker's part of this corruption. We all know that when he became governor, he hired over 30 people off Madigan's clout list onto the state coffers that still work there today. You know, he gave Madigan's criminal enterprise $10 million to continue the illegality going on in our state. So what I'm hearing as I go around this state is people are sick and tired of the way things are going. People are scared about our future. People are scared about our future.
Saying, isn't it just a bit disingenuous to attack your rivals for the nomination, alleging how they voted, when you yourself, who pulled Democratic primary ballots, will not say who they voted for?
Listen.
How can you attack Darren Bailey and call him a soft on Trump or never Trumper? How can you attack Jesse Sullivan as a never Trumper when you yourself will not say who you voted for, if you voted for Donald Trump, and would you vote for him again if he's the nominee in 2020?
You know, let's talk about records for a second. As a matter of fact, you know, campaigns are about records. As I pointed out, you know, J.B. Pritzker and my opponents on the Republican side were attacking me and my record even before I formally announced. But I'm not going to fall into the trap of J.B. Pritzker. You know, I'm not going to fall into the trap of J.B. Pritzker talking about what he thinks we should be talking about in this campaign. We need to be talking about his failures as governor. I'm running for governor of the state of Illinois, and I want to compare my record. I want to compare my record to J.B. Pritzker's record. But let's talk about, you know, some of the things that I believe is hypocrisy. You know, my opponents, Bailey, talk about a number of things. You know, try to point me out and say that I have a record that doesn't exist. But let's talk about Bailey's record for a second. He raised taxes 81%, property taxes 81%. This is fact. That's hypocrisy. 81%. That's higher than Chicago. He also brings migrant workers onto his farm. He says that he's against mask mandates, but he brings migrant workers from out of this country onto his farm to do work, and he forces them to have a mask mandate. That's hypocrisy. He also says that the reason he's trucking these migrant workers in to work on his farm is because Americans don't want to work. Now, and he won't hire his own community members from his neighborhood. Now, that's hypocrisy. That's un-American. Let's talk about Jesse Sullivan for a second. He says that he served in uniform. Come on, we all know what that means. That means that he served in the United States Armed Forces. We know that's not true. I'm offended. As a veteran of the United States Army, I'm offended that somebody would pretend that they served our country when so many of our fellow soldiers. Hold on, let me finish. So let me just say this. Also, Jesse Sullivan, he advocates and supports open borders. That means he doesn't really want there to be a United States. He wants people to be able to travel back and forth in the United States without question. That's un-American. So if we're talking about comparing records, let's compare my record. Let's talk about my record as a combat veteran. Let's talk about my, hold on a second, sir. Let's talk about my record as a prosecutor who personally put criminals behind bars. Let's talk about my record as mayor of the second. Last question, Tony, one more question from down south, Tony.
Yes, this is from Greg Bishop with the Center Square.
Yes, sir.
He'd like to know if what we're talking about today rises to the level of criminal negligence.
Absolutely. What we're talking about today rises to the level of negligence where somebody has to be held responsible for the death of our 36 heroes that could have been prevented and avoided. Deaths that but for J.B. Prisker's failure to act, could be alive today. Their families deserve for J.B. Prisker to answer as to why he allowed their loving family members, heroes of the state of Illinois, to die and perish without concern. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys today.